I was wondering if you can just give us, a basic run through of what the World Economic Forum is, who runs it, and what it's promoting.
I think it helps to understand, geopolitically speaking, the last 100 years of how the world transitioned from the British Empire to Pax Americana. If we understand that, there's a big fat book that I lectured through some years ago called Tragedy and Hope. And that's a really important tome because Dr. Carroll Quigley, was Bill Clinton's professor. Like he's the one that trained me and everything I know. So Bill's mentor is the archivist and historian of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is one of these big global steering committees that really kind of sets policy for a lot of things, like you could argue for the world in a way, because they're based on the British Empire's model of steering committees, or what was originally called the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which is itself a front for Lord Rothschild and Cecil Rose's plan to build the British Empire into a world empire.
Okay.
And there's a book that Lord Curtis wrote, one of the people in their circles, called Commonwealth of God. It doesn't have anything to do with God, but it was just the front, basically, the plan that they had to build this world federation. And so it kind of went through a few phases that failed. The British imperial model didn't last, but around the time of World War II, right before World War II, the British wanted to bring the Americans back under their sway. So they sent Ian Fleming, the guy who created James Bond, literally sent him over to buddy up to a lot of people in the U.S., along with a few other British intelligence agents like William Stevenson out of Canada, Noel Coward, the famous children's book author and actor. And they convinced FDR and other people, Bill Donovan, to create the OSS, which would become the CIA. And that's really kind of the busybodies of the deep state shadow government, you could say. And so they functioned perfectly to do their job to get the U.S. back into this, what's called Anglo-American establishment. That's one of Quigley's other books that he wrote that goes along with Tragedy and Hope. And this really is just the explanation of the Western power bloc. So for the last 100 years, we haven't really had sovereign nation states. We've had in the West a power bloc that succeeded in knocking out, in the 20th century, their two rivals, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russia. So that was the point of the two world wars and the Cold War. That's what Quigley's whole big book is about. And again, he's writing not as a conspiracy theorist, but as the archivist and historian for this clique.
Okay.
So what I did was, I was like, all right, so when I read that, I was like, this is crazy. This is real. And, you don't get told this, even in, the philosophy classes I was taking in college and whatnot. You don't learn this kind of stuff. So I was like, I'm going to get the writings of the elite for the last 100 years. And we've read, I think, 50, maybe 60 now. And we just lecture through those. So all I do is basically just read from their texts, explain, summarize, and lecture what they say. And that demonstrates a continuity of plan from 100 years ago. And I mean, it goes back longer than that, but it's easy to pick out 100 years ago and then go all the way up to now with recent writings from the elite, like Klaus Schwab from World Economic Forum, who in his books has the exact same plan and agenda that people that were writing 100 years ago. So that's an easy way to see that, wait a minute, so the World Economic Forum is just another one of these sort of public steering committee debate groups of Fortune 100, Fortune 500, banking elite, et cetera, that are intent on pushing this Great Reset / ultimately world government model.
That's the
and
goal.
I mean, he even says it like in all these talks, right? We're going to get inside your biology. We're going to get inside of you, right? We're not going to change your mind. We're going to change you.
Who is he, Klaus Schwab?
Yeah.
He was a foreign academic recruited at Western Ivy League universities to be part of this CIA / CFR created entity known as the World Economic Forum. Ultimately, he was recruited by Kissinger out of the superstructure of the elite.
Okay.
And Kissinger was kind of put in there by the Rockefellers. So it's the same Rockefeller who allied with the British elite, Cliveden, Set, Astors, and so forth, Cecil Rhodes, Rothschild Group. So that's who runs our Western power bloc, is these people. And the World Economic Forum is just one of these many entities. Bilderberg is another one that people have probably heard of, but Klaus used to be the head of Bilderberg. So then he,
oh really?
Yeah. Then he went on to be WEF head.
Is anyone to trust anyone who's involved with the World Economic Forum?
I mean, it depends on, I guess, on what level.
In the capacity,
I mean,
let's say like a Dan
capacity.
Crenshaw or a Tulsi Gabbard.
I mean, I
young leaders.
Right. I mean, Putin was a young leader as well. A lot of people have been invited to those meetings. So, I mean, attending meetings and conferences doesn't necessarily mean that you're on board with everything that you're invited to. But at the same time, I mean, I think we should have a healthy suspicion of people that, because they potentially obviously could be. And I think it would be reflected in their, their voting record and their actions, rather than whether they attended a meeting or a conference. But, I mean, if you read Klaus's books, I mean, he's very open about what all he wants to implement. And again,
I saw a clip of him talking about wanting to put a chip in everybody.
Yeah.
So that's real. They actually want to do that.
Yeah, the whole so he in 2018 or 19 he wrote Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the last third of that book is about basically Skynet, like Terminator Skynet level stuff. And
really?
Like we're gonna
so
put
social
the
credit score for sure. That's part of it. Nanotechnology,
Internet of Things, total Skynet tracking, all of that. Yeah.
It's
Is there
like the
anyone
Black Mirror episode with Bryce Dallas Howard?
Oh, right.
To rate everybody.
Exactly.
Is there anyone that you know of who's prominent who's fighting this kind of way of the way of this wanted future that elites want to push? Or are you kind of doing that?
Well, I guess it depends on by prominence. Like, I mean, obviously there's alternative media figures way bigger than my audience. That,
sure.
You've got
Voldemort and
Tucker,
Lord
you've got Lord
Voldemort.
Voldemort, you've got, to a degree, I guess Joe Rogan is at least aware of this, and
right.
At least on his podcast, he offers, opposing views, which people don't like very much. But in amongst very wealthy, powerful people, there would be few and far between. That I don't really